Hello and welcome to post-match reaction to the Crusaders versus the Brumbies. And boy, oh boy, after the blowouts of the last two games, well, big game, or two big victories in the last night, perhaps not blowouts, but in the last two games yesterday, this one was a tight one that went down to the final kick of the game with Lodosio having a kick to draw the game. But Valentini's try was wide out on the left, making it a very difficult kick for him. And unfortunately, he missed that last kick of the game, meaning that the score's finished 31-29. The Crusaders coming up to win by just 2 points over the Brumbies. Look, I think memories from this one are that it's a decent game, but that's only because we had the decent rugby in the second half, not in the first half. It's a game of two halves, as they say, but not in the normal sense. That first half was messy as it really, really was. We had a very early try for the Crusaders, and then we had about 10 or so minutes of just trying to get a scrum that actually would finish and complete. We had so many resets. Then we'd have a little bit of play, and then we'd have another scrum, a little bit of play, another scrum, and it was just an absolute mess. The Brumbies also had an interception and then had a penalty for offside and go to the corner, but their line-out maul didn't quite work this evening. The Crusaders line-out, the Crusaders maul defence was very, very good. We saw at the end actually that the Brumbies ended up taking taps at penalty time, not going to the corner when they were sort of 5 to 10 metres out, which was an interesting call. They're clearly not happy with how their set piece was going to give them a platform, or didn't want to tie their forwards into a scrum for that one. The Brumbies did finally bash over and score on 26 minutes to take a 2-point lead. But one of the problems the Brumbies had in this game is they allowed scores straight back afterwards, pretty much. A scrum at the restart after drop at the restart led to a scrum, and Richie Mo'unga stepped inside as the two defenders coming from the scrum both overcommit, steps around three players, and over he goes. Lodosio did the right thing, stopping Richie Mo'unga going on the outside and forcing him back in. But I say there's two other defenders overcommitted, and over he went. Some lovely rugby to suddenly be 12-7 up. The Brumbies then go corner, but they give up a free kick with poor line-out things. And then the Havili, who had been dicing with offside all game, got it right finally, got an interception, and over he went. No one was going to catch him from that. And suddenly it's 19-7. In again, it's been very messy. The Crusaders built up a nice 12-point lead at that point. I don't think either side particularly deserved much of a lead in that first half. I say it was horrible rugby. The Brumbies had slightly better of it with 60% possession and 75% territory in that first half, but didn't feel like that at all, I can tell you. Give you an idea as to the state of handling in this game. We had 6 scrums for the Crusaders and 12 for the Brumbies. Yes, the Crusaders' handling was not great in this one. 14 turnovers from the Crusaders as well to 11 from the Brumbies there. I say very different games from the ones last night. The second half, though, there was some real nice rugby in there. We had a contrast of styles as well. The Crusaders clearly got told at half-time, play possession, keep hold of the ball. They went through 15 phases from the kickoff, playing out of their own 22. We saw a bit of what the Highlanders were doing with that kicking in behind in the first half by the Crusaders, and they did do a little couple of chips at the end, towards the end of that 15 phases, or a little try to grub us through to try and find that space behind. So a bit similar to that sort of tactic. Were the Crusaders hit and chase? The Brumbies not taking the weight? I have no idea, to be honest with you. I'm not a scrum expert, but all I can say is they were an absolute total mess nearly all the game. In the second half, then the Brumbies got themselves up to the try line. The Crusaders got their allocation either side of the ruck wrong, and it was an easy touchdown in the end to pull things close. And surprisingly, after that, the Brumbies also then went post and actually kicked a penalty, which must be one of the first or a very rare thing for them. They normally go corner, so clearly they were not happy with how their lineouts were going. So they took the 3 points there to make it a 2-point game. And they were very lucky not to concede a try again very quickly after that, as they stood off Blackadder, but his foot was adjudged in touch. Very difficult to see whether it was or wasn't, in all honesty. All a bit of a mess there. The Crusaders then showed how you do your line-out maul try, and got it over. In all honesty, a bit of a tough call on against the Brumbies at the previous line-out. Was he really thrown across? I'm not so sure, but that's how the touchy call it, and that gave the Crusaders a platform of that 5-metre scrum to go, a 5-metre line-out, to go over. A flat ball to Cullen Grace then, and at 31-17, you're thinking, okay, it's all over. Let's call it all over. But no, Tom Banks straight after that, a really good break on the outside, looking for his winger, sees that he's covered, so just steps inside the last defender, who again overcommits and tries to slide on to the next winger, who Leicester Fanuku probably had. And he should have used the sideline more as an extra defender and forced Banks wide. But Banks came inside and scored. And suddenly it was game back on at 31-24. Look, the Crusaders, with plenty of penalties, particularly in their own 22. We know they do that because they're happy to give away 3 rather than 5 or 7. But the Brumbies were not kicking 3s. So, hey, what do you do? 16 penalties for the Crusaders. Eventually, they got a yellow card. Reese should have been yellow carded straight afterwards for just continual infringing. But all that led to was an extra warning to the Crusaders. But Inari the scrum half went off with the yellow card there with a couple of minutes left. Look, the Crusaders didn't have any set piece after that, so who really cares? Or didn't have a ball after that, so they didn't really miss him. From that point of view, again, the Brumbies taking taps at this point, as I say, not going for that line out, really didn't trust it, which you think, and that's been the hallmark of this Brumbies team for the past, I don't know, as long as I can remember, basically. Valentini slam dunked the ball down out wide, unfortunately for them. That Lolosio missed the conversion. But they got very, very close to that draw. No golden point or golden try in this competition, folks. It would have been a draw. We wouldn't have had any extra time in it. So the should time be awarded for the time to award penalty tries for cynical defending, it says nocturnal rights. Yes, well, unfortunately, that's not what the law says. The law says it has been a probable try if that person had not, if the offence hadn't happened. Which we weren't in that kind of territory for that. As I say, the second half, the Crusaders came out and played possession rugby, whereas the Brumbies played territory. You saw them kicking long back to the Crusaders, allowing the Crusaders to play through their phases to play back up. It was interesting to see a very different style of tactics there from the two teams. Nocturnal Rights saying there that in the live chat, the Brumbies took a while to adjust to the physicality of this game, and they did in the second half. But yeah, a big shift by their forwards. Let's be honest. Also, really impressed with Tom Banks. You've got to say he has got he's got the Wallabies 15 jersey. Surely has got to be his when we get to that stage. But really did enjoy his play. So yeah, so 16 penalties by the Crusaders plus another 3 free kicks. That's a lot of penalising there. 11 by the Brumbies with 1 free kick. In that one. Tackling, yeah, not particularly good at 81% and 84%, but better than last than last night. Let's be honest, over in Sydney. Having a look at some of the stats. I mean, one of the other things is, look, both sides used their benches, so we had top players. We had top players definitely going off, and players who maybe not have had much game time getting on the pitch here. Something we're going to see, I think, a lot in these first few rounds of Super Rugby Trans-Tasman, and maybe the whole way through. So Tom Banks, I mentioned there, 8 runs, 106 metres, 1 clean break, 6 defenders beaten. Kata also, really, when he got the ball, he was bouncing off defenders, wasn't he? Another 4 defenders beaten there. And Lolosio with 5 defenders beaten as well. Yes, he had that during that first half, actually, which led to their first try. Yeah, he danced around a few players, didn't he? Lolosio had very much a chalk and cheese night. Some stuff he did was absolutely really great. Some stuff he did was awful. Kicks outs on the full at restarts. That little grubber through, which, okay, they got away with it because Fanuku knocked it on, but it wasn't really the right option when you're just a couple of metres from the goal line. And then let's say, that dancing through. So Lolosio, say, a bit rocks and diamonds in that one. Valentini had the most carries for the Brumbies with 15 for 51 metres. He's had a good game, even if he did make a few mistakes along the way, such as that dropped restart. David Havili also a really good game, as did Richard Mwanga, who just continues to impress at this level. It's going to be really interesting to see which way the All Blacks go for that number 10 jersey. Ethan Blackadder got that try in the first half, but O'Connor, who hasn't played at this level much, came on and really got himself involved a lot in the time that he was on. So yeah, a very good showing from him. He was very visible when he came on. George Bridge also a decent game. Macchielli, I think he needs game time and needs to run a game, doesn't he? I think really for him to come back into it. One of those big things was discipline around this one. 4 penalties conceded by David Havili. Look, those offsides early on, really not very good in that one. Scott Seo with 3 penalties and Alalato with 2. I say the scrums were an absolute farce. George Bauer with a penalty and Alalato with 2 more. Ollie Jaeger with 3 penalties. And one of those was a head-high tackle. But the scrums were a mess, and you can see that with the number of penalties that the props picked up. Aaron, uninspiring game. It wasn't the first half. I enjoyed the second half. I thought there was some good rugby in the second half personally, but the first half really was a mess and very, very difficult to watch in that one. And there's me praising David Havili, and look, those penalties and also 5 missed tackles from having made 9. So not a great one for him. Ethan Black had a big shift for those 12 tackles in there. So look, respectability regained by Australia in this one. I say could have been a draw. Just came down to 1 kick there at the end. Clearly, the Crusaders will be happy to have got the win on the board now. With only a 5-round tournament, it is you can't afford to slip up. Otherwise, you'll soon be dropping down the table. But say good, decent performance a respectful performance by the Brumbies, which was good to see after those opening 2 games. And we have 2 more games this evening: the Rebels against the Blues, and then the Force against the Chiefs. So plenty of rugby to come, folks. Going through till 2 o'clock in the morning, probably around here in New Zealand. Do join us at 8 p.m. tomorrow evening on Sunday. We'll review all of the games. Yes, I'll be staying up and watching them all. So do join me on the old Twitter as well, at Driving Maul on Twitter, if you want to have a chat about the games, join the games, and catch you all there. Enjoy the rest of the rugby, folks.